Roll call 219, and we're going to do a Rose Corner. Uh, this is something that needs to be kind of addressed. Um, Over the course of the time, we've been watching when COVID first showed up, the panic buying. It's not so much the virus, it's what happens during it, which would be civil unrest, things of that nature. And what we're seeing in gun shops lately, particularly mine, is the lack of product. The lack of product has been overwhelming at this point. I think there's only 40 guns in my case, and the majority of those are shotguns, and they're bird guns. They're not self-defense, they're nothing like that. And the rest of the handguns are left are either 22 caliber or there's some 380s. Not much of a 9mm to go around, unless you're going to be paying a little bit above $500. And a lot of people that are buying firearms for the first time, they're not looking to at least spend that much, which I think you should really buy yourself a nice quality handgun, especially as a first-time gun owner. A lot of that has to do with I believe the distribution of how the firearms come along. I think that, like, from what I've gathered from doing it for the last few years, is the manufacturer takes it to the wholesaler, and then the wholesaler distributes it through its clientele that it has. All right. I'm guessing more and more places are just buying direct. So the wholesalers are getting cut out of the middle. Some places I've even seen in my just in my area alone, whether it be the Bass Pro Shops, they're not getting as much as possible to fulfill their needs, which is a little alarming, because usually those people, they're probably going to go buy direct anyway. That way they can fill their shelves. What a lot of people don't understand about my shop is it's not a strictly guns. There's other products on the shelves, like farming equipment, things of that nature. It's a small area of the store, and it's just not a run-of-the-mill gun shop that you see at like your local gun shop. This is more like a farmish kind of store, I would say, on those levels. So I'm gathering is, with the people that buy the firearms, they're not getting it from their wholesalers, and they don't have enough contacts to buy direct. You know, I've seen them try to do it with Beretta for a time, but it seems that that's not really working out the way they wanted to, because I found some of the Beretta handguns that we sell, I can find them cheaper online. So I don't know if that's something they have to do with whoever job it is to buy the firearms. So I can see that as a problem. The next biggest problem is ammunition. When COVID first started, you saw people freak out. Not only that is, whatever was in the gun case, they wanted to buy it because there was ammo on the shelf. More or less now, if you buy a firearm, generally in my area, it's going to be a doorstop. Unless you were buying ammunition pre-COVID and now you're in this post-COVID mode, it's going to be very hard to buy ammunition. The one local gun shop besides ours in the area, you have to buy a firearm in order to get ammunition. That's the only way to get it, especially for 9mm. That's strictly for 9mm at my local gun shop that I shop at. You have to buy that of a 9mm handgun in order to get 9mm ammunition. That's how much it's in demand in my area. Now, I've had other people text me call me and tell me that their shops are pretty much flooded with ammunition. How they got that ammunition, I'm not sure, because I don't live in that area, and I don't know their procedures. Our procedures are, I've noticed that they're a lot different than what I see at other gun shops. The one local gun shop that I used to always frequent, that became a sponsor of the channel for a short time, he gave me a lot of the ins and outs of how he went about buying and getting it from distributors. So that gave me a little bit of insight on how he got ammunition, and now I see it through where I work now, of little glimpses of how they're trying to do it. Now, ammunition is a problem in my area for two reasons. One is COVID-19 and everybody freaking out about COVID-19 and the possibilities of theft, break-ins, things of that nature, and they just need something to protect themselves, which is understandable. The next ramp up that we saw, because as COVID kind of came down to the level, I noticed there's shipments coming in of ammunition. Now, when COVID started dropping off, we were getting, at one point, sometimes cases of ammunition, a lot of shotgun stuff, a lot of 22, maybe a case of 9mm or 380. Not a lot in the shipments, and maybe 2 or 3 handguns if we got lucky. That was about it. Now that's completely dried up. The last 3 shipments at my job has been nothing but just other products that we sell in the store, in my department, but knives, boating accessories, things of that nature. Nothing really gun related, unless you needed like a gun vise or a magnet or a shitty holster. That was about it that came through some of the shipments. Again, before this is like right when COVID started to go down, and no one sort of, started to pay a huge mind to it because the numbers started to go down and everything. But then you saw it ramp right back up, and that's with the civil unrest. Things like Seattle, things like definitely Minnesota, things of that nature. That revved the engines right back up of panic buying. What a lot of people don't understand, when you start panic buying in that kind of a mode, if you buy a firearm, we always suggest that you go out and shoot 100 to maybe even 300 rounds to make sure that gun's going to be reliable. At this point, when you start panic buying like that, and you go, well, I'm going to go to the range, I'm going to shoot 100 rounds, and I'm going to come back and buy another box, to replenish what I shot, and there's nothing on the shelf. Well, that's the reason why, because people are panicking so much, is they weren't preparing. They weren't preparing for instances like this, COVID. Whenever I would go into a place, regardless of where it was, I would always buy a box of ammunition here. If it was on sale, I'd buy it. And I just started to stack it, right? I started to prep it, because you never know when these things come along. So, you had COVID drop, and then you have it rubbed back up with all the civil unrest that we've seen all across the country due to police brutality. So then now you're right back at the levels of how COVID was when it first hit the scene, and it jumped that scale. Now we're right back at it. Those are some of the most frequent questions that I get. Do you have any handgun ammunition? No, we don't. Do you have any shotgun rounds at this point? No, we don't. I mean, it's ramped so far back up that I think the people, I call them the buyers, they can't get a deal on it. And they shouldn't be looking for a deal at this point. But yet again, I think they're not going to make what they want to make off it. I could be wrong. I might be wrong. I couldn't really tell you. But I look at it as that might be the aspect that they can't afford to get it, at this point. Not only that is manufacturers are getting kind of bombarded again. So production might be ramping up in the place where it's manufactured, but the distribution of it is so wide. Not only that, you have people around the country going online and buying in bulk, where then you have the gun shops that can't go out and maybe touch base with these distributors and buy bulk to put on their shelves, because individuals are buying bulk. It all depends on your state laws too, because a lot of states you can buy ammunition and have it shipped to your house. Other states you have to go and fill out a background check for ammunition. So that factors in there as well. So there's a lot of stuff that's turning right now, and you can see it just by how this is now, the civil unrest is now revved back up. I mean, you're bending the RPMs at this point to the point where you're going to burn out the engine. And a lot of people think, well, it's going to die down. COVID's going to die down. The civil unrest is going to go away. But you have to expect the unexpected. That stuff might go away for a certain point of time. I would count more on the civil disobedience and the protesting than I would say COVID, because now we're seeing reports of COVID jumping the scales in certain states where it's ramped back up again. So my prediction is COVID is going to be another, it's going to be the second wave, I call it, the second wave of panic buying, because people, more people are opening, more politicians are opening up their states, and more things are coming to fruition about more people congregating. The virus is going to spread. Therefore, it's gonna start ramping up again, and you're gonna have panic buying start over. And not only that, you're gonna have election time. We all know who's running for president, and you know who's running in your locals. Hopefully you do. So you're gonna see that. That's gonna take off, and that's gonna be the third wave of why your shelves are empty at your local gun shop. I don't know how many times it's been ever since COVID started, and we got to almost the middle point of it. In April and May, into that point, March, April, and May, those were like the kill spots for my shop, at least. Is nothing was coming in, nothing. And then we seen that kind of drop, and then we started to see firearms come in, and then we started seeing a little bit of trickling of ammunition walking through the door. But then you had the civil unrest happen across the country, and that totally left the building after that. But now you're going to have elections coming up, and whoever gets elected is going to be another wave of what may or may not happen in that aspect. So prepping for these occasions is huge. If you like to go out and shoot for SSNGs, or you like to go shoot matches, or you're just not a reloader at this point, I look at instead of buying ammunition, you should go really look hard at reloading equipment at this point, especially if you want to shoot a lot. I think that might be a little bit of a better ply at this point than just waiting for ammunition to arrive on a shelf wherever you may be. Yes, that does get expensive, but if you look at the times that we're in now, and you see people struggling, like I was just at Bass Pro Shop a couple of weeks ago, and their shelves were completely empty. And Bass Pro Shop is a huge company, and when you see their shelves emptied, just like my shelves are, then you start to wonder, Is it because of the direct buying, or is it because people are buying in bulk? Just individual citizens, or are companies, some companies, just going straight to the distribution sources, and cutting out the middlemen, and that's how they're getting their ammunition. So it's, at this point, for me, it's hard to tell. I haven't been doing this a whole lot. I don't know all the ins and outs, but these are some of my thoughts that are going in through my head, because I get at least 10 to 15 phone calls about ammunition. And then if it's not the 10 to 15, it's the 30 to 40 calls about certain firearms. So you can really see that. I was in my local store, and I've seen a gun in there that we have sold at one point for a little over $300 go up to the price of about $450. So that's a significant jump, especially for that product and the company, because it wasn't. It was a Kel-Tec brand gun. So you usually don't see Kel-Tecs go that much. But again, that might be another instrument in why you're not seeing what you want to see, which is different guns on the shelf, is because those guns are so expensive when you're buying them per se as a business to what you're going to make on the back end. I mean, you could always go and buy these guns, but you're going to have to make some type of profit off of it. And right now, I don't think the profit margin for my shop is there. I don't think they want to take the risk. Again, they did buy quite a few Smith & Wesson SD9VEs, but now you see those are starting to diminish. I think we got at one point almost 35 of those guns, and I think there's only 3 left. So now you can see that, all the options of Glock, SIG, CZ, all those options are out the door because we can't get a hold of those guns. So those were some of the guns that they could possibly, those were the only ones they could get for a decent price and sell it to make some kind of profit off of it. Again, you don't make a ton of, from what I've seen, we don't make a ton of money off guns. We don't. Our profit margin, I look at it, is more of the variety of holsters and the doodads you can stick on your firearms. I think that's really where money is made at, that and ammunition. And when you can't get ammunition, that creates a problem. When you can't get ammunition, you can't get the firearms, and you're not going to sell the holsters, the magazines, the things of that nature, because there's no guns, to put in the holsters, and there's no ammunition to put into the guns. So I think that all this stuff is factoring in there where you see it as crunch time. So this is why I've always told people, whether I'm working or I'm just out and about in society talking to my friends, if you come across those boxes, to buy those boxes of ammunition, to buy that firearm, because you don't know the next opportunity at this point when you're going to get that firearm. You're going to find that firearm, or you're going to get it for a decent price. Because I'm telling you, I've been looking for a Glock 43 or a Glock 26. I really want a 26, but I focused on a Glock 43 for, a couple of weeks there, and I did find one. We were just selling a regular standard Glock 43 for about four something. These people almost wanted $600 for it. And this is for a Glock 43. So now you're kind of seeing my perception about what people are buying. Not only that, I've seen people buy stuff from places like Cheap and Dirt, which would be like an EC9S, one of those Ruger guns, and they'll overpay $150 plus a transfer fee on top of that. So now hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing. I've even posted some of this stuff online. That price gouging has gone on in different companies, but the people are so willing to pay for it. They're having no other option. If they really need a firearm and they think they're in that much of fear drives sales, man. That's what happens. We've seen it happen during the Obama administration. We've seen it during the 22 crisis, when you couldn't buy 22 anywhere. You couldn't find it on the shelf, and if you did, you paid a hearty penny for it. And this is the same type of thing, maybe not in the same constructive concept of it, but it's along those same lines about panic buying. I think when you start panic buying, that creates a problem, and it creates a huge problem where people like my business and other business, especially around my area, the shelves are going to be dry for a while until everybody calms down. And I can see why people, are in fear. I honestly, you just flip on the news, watch YouTube, and watch some of the protesting and unrest in the country, and you can really tell why. But these are some of my thoughts that I've been thinking the past month and a half almost. Again, it got okay when COVID went down, but now that we see what else is going on in the country with police brutality, this has spiked it in my area to no ends. And I don't see ammunition coming back on my shelf for quite some time. So if you're a subscriber and you live in my area and you stopped into my store, you can cruise my section, but you're not going to find anything. You're just not. You might find a magazine for your AR, or a magazine for a gun that you've already had. But if you're expecting to find ammunition, or you're expecting to find a Springfield Hellcat, a 365, an XL, or anything along those lines, well, you're going to be SOL, because those guns are in high demand. I had 4 calls today just for a 365. So you're not going to be seeing that kind of firearms come through, at least in my area, for a good time. Again, I go to my local shop, and another thing that I've really taken notice to is trade-ins. Some of my local shops, they do trade-ins for used firearms. Used firearms, I've seen that dwindle past 50%. Usually my local will have a whole case dedicated to used firearms. It's not like that. You'll be lucky to see 3 in that case. You'll be lucky to see 3 firearms in that case. And to tell you the truth, the firearms that do wind up in that case are guns that I would shy away from. So you have to put that in perspective, that used guns you're not going to be finding a whole lot of. Now, each person's area does, it's not going to be like where I am, and I can understand that. But for other people that live in this area, that's what we're going through now as I'm watching it unfold on the other side of the counter, and watching what shows up on the doorstep to put out for sale. So that's another aspect that you got to really, really focus on, and watch at your local stores. Ask them, ask a question about if they do sell used firearms, what their perspective is. People aren't going to be giving up their firearms, and more so if you do have a firearm. This would probably be a great time to sell that firearm if you don't really need it. If it's one of those guns that just sit around your safe and you don't really carry it, you don't really depend your life on it, it's just one of those guns that sit in your safe, this is probably one of the best times to get value out of your firearms, because we all know when you go to trade in a firearm, or you go to just sell a firearm, you usually do not get what you put into it at all. It's well below that value. But I see at this point in time, this is probably the prime time to sell one of those guns that you don't use very often, or you don't use at all, or if you've only used it once in the time it's been in your possession. I think this is going to be a huge selling point. I've gathered up 4 guns that I'm probably going to sell because I don't use them. Before COVID, I've gotten better guns that are going to serve the purpose and the role that those other guns did. So I'm pretty much going to upgrade to something. Another aspect that I've seen is I went to a place in Maryville in my area, and the only guns in those cases were either Wilson Combat or Nighthawk or something around that range, and it went for the same for ARs. ARs were very, very pricey. If you have an AR that you really don't have a use for, or something of that nature, ARs are worth their weight in gold right now. So if you don't really want that AR, or it's just been sitting around and you don't use it, this is a great time to sell it and bring in some extra income and sit on that money. Because after, hopefully after everything passes, I don't see a lot of these people holding on to their firearms. Then all of us are gonna see the used market just be flooded. But then again, if you're looking to sell that firearm after all this is over with, whenever it does get over with, you're going to see the value of your firearm decline significantly, because these people are going to be like, look, everything's over with. We're not going to need these firearms anymore, so we're just going to sell it. All the handouts are going away, whether it be the unemployment that people are getting, because some people are getting more on unemployment than what they would have made at that job anyway. And then you have the cootie cash that's drying up. When the stimulus first came out, the counter was backed up, man. You knew this is where that money was going. That money was going for firearms and ammunition. That's what people were using that money for. So that's another thing that you're going to see. Bills are going to be rolling in, folks, whether they like it or not. I mean, some states have been doing the forgiveness on rent and certain things like that, man. But sooner or later, people are going to have to pay their bills. And I think that's another aspect you're going to see of firearms, is the used market after things hopefully calm down, and after maybe the election, or just maybe after, COVID kind of creeps back a little bit, and the bills start coming in for people that have to pay their car payments, their house payments, their lot rent, things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna see a lot of those used guns drip back out into the market, and you might take that money when the market was up here and you sold those firearms, and now the market is down here where those people are getting rid of those firearms, and come across something that you've always wanted. So keep that in the back of your mind. Some people call me an asshole for that, but I'm just looking at the aspects of the trends that I'm seeing each day at work, or week by week, and especially month by month, because we're not seeing a lot of firearms in the shops around my area. Particularly, I know there's a lot of people that show their pictures of, my store got 10 cases of ammunition. That 10 cases, it's not going to last that long for the next outcome, whatever it may be. It could be more civil unrest, or it could be something, God forbid, something worse than that. So you're going to always have to put that in your back of your mind. I went to my local and I picked up an extra box of 223 because they publicized it on Facebook, and I was like, okay, sounds good to me. So I went down there. I wasn't late to the party, and I got me a box of that, a box of shotgun shells, and a box of a 38 special. You know what I'm saying? And they asked me if I wanted more than one box. I said no. I said I'm going to leave it for the next guy that's struggling to find it, because you never know, they might need it. So I was trying to look out for the other people that are struggling to find ammunition. I've seen people. I was at a local place called Dunham's, and I was going through and looking through what they had, and they didn't have much of anything. And I watched another YouTuber's channel, is One Shot, I believe it was, and he said that was the mecca of where he could buy his ammunition. At my Dunham's, it was wiped out. And I did pick up, I think I picked up some 22 because they had some Stingers there. So I always buy the Stingers. I prefer those to run in my 22 handguns, other than just bulk ammunition or the little boxes. I like the Stingers for those handguns. Well, the guy in front of me's got 6 boxes of 9mm. And I'm thinking to myself, that's why I only have 1 box of 9mm in my hand, is because this guy's got the other 6 boxes. So you have to put that in perspective. If stores aren't putting a limit on what you can buy, there's somebody that could buy the whole case, and then you're out. So you have to factor all these things in to the equation of what we're seeing in today's market. So again, just be aware of these things. Just look out for it. Make precise moves in what you want to do. You're either going to sell high or buy low, you know, at this point in time. So if you can find that ammunition, buy a couple of boxes. Am I saying wipe the shelf? I'd be cautious of that, because you don't know when that shelf's going to get refilled. And that's one of the main aspects when I go into these other shops, that I don't buy the shelf. Because I know if I keep on buying the shelf, sooner or later that shelf's not going to replenish itself. Say that a bunch of times. So keep all this in perspective. That's how I'm looking at it in this kind of this kind of motion that we're going through. You know, you had COVID on the first spot with the pandemic and everybody freaking out. Then you watch COVID kind of fade, and then you had civil unrest where the RPMs went way up, man. You know, you're flatlining them. And now civil unrest and COVID is kind of coming down at one point, but now you see COVID rising again in the timelines. So pay attention to that, because that will be the next spot. Because remember what happens when some of this stuff goes about. You get put on under a curfew. Gun ranges get shut down. There's huge battles in the courts to open them. Unless you can shoot on your own property, you know, I look at shooting as a perishable skill. And if you don't continuously practice, it could go away. So always think about these things that go on. So put these little bits and pieces into the memory bank. I'm not the hugest big knowledge person about the gun industry. I think there's some other people out there that are a little bit more familiar and been doing selling firearms longer than me. But this is the trend that I see in my store. This is the trend I see in little sprinkles out here in my area. If you're one of those people that can get a hold of ammunition, can get a hold of any gun that you want, you're sitting pretty at this point. But always remember, these other certain aspects could creep up, and then you're stuck. You're stuck in a situation where you may not be able to go shoot if you don't have that capability. You might not be able to go out, and then guns and ammunition become non-essentials like they did in some parts of the country. So keep that stuff, factor it in there. This is just a little tidbit of what I have to think on this current situation that we're going through. I think there's going to be another phase of panic buying. I think there's going to be another phase of shortage. If you're not seeing the shortage now, hopefully you don't. But in my area, you're seeing it rapidly. Thanks for watching. And like always, guys, we'll catch you on the next one.